You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Welcome to the Toronto Sports Rush here on the Bet Rivers Network. EJ Hradek alongside Pierre McGuire. Pierre, good to see you.
Great to visit with you, EJ, especially at this time of the year. I love talking hockey all year long, but especially in the summer. The hot stove is truly a hot stove.
Yeah, the hot stove is burning, and we had some news around the National Hockey League on Wednesday. The schedule was released. I know fans always get excited about that because they're trying to figure out where they're going to go, if they can travel to see certain games. So It's always a big day for those of us in the business as well, to try to see where our schedules may take us down the road. But wanted to get your take, Pierre, on the Toronto Maple Leafs schedule because, let's face it, I mean, the schedule is an important guide for everyone to figure out how things are going to go. I won't waste time with the particulars at the start because we've got to get right to the big date. Mitch Marner coming back to Toronto. What is it? January the 23rd, a Friday night. I would imagine the building will be buzzing, and maybe not in a happy way for old Mitch Marner.
You know what it's going to remind me of, EJ, and I think you were probably there when John Tavares returned to play against the New York Islanders as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was very unfriendly. And the fans on Long Island are unbelievably passionate. They really care about their product. They care about the guys that are drafted by the team and stay with the team. And anybody that leaves, especially as an unrestricted free agent, they're the enemy. That's how the Islander fans see it. I don't think it'll be any different when Mitchell Marner comes back on January the 23rd after playing a game the night before in Boston on the 22nd. I think when he arrives in Toronto, it's going to be a whole lot of nasty at the building. I really do.
You know, it's interesting, you point that out, right? Back-to-back for the Vegas Golden Knights. That makes it, maybe it's a little better deal for Mitch because he's not obligated, I guess, to do anything in the morning when you play the night before, right?
Great point. Very true as well. And, I think the biggest thing is when you look at Vegas, it's Bruce Cassidy going back. It's Jack Eichel, a Boston guy, going back. So those guys are going to do the heavy lifting. It's Noah Hannafin going back to Boston. So those Vegas guys, it's kind of like Mitch is going to be under the radar when you think about it because all those Boston guys or former Bruins guys are going back to Boston. Mitch is going to come in. It's going to be, what's going on now? But I think when he gets to Toronto, your point has so much reliability because the truth of the matter is he doesn't have to go to the morning skate.
Yeah, so that takes a little of the heat off. If he doesn't want to, I mean, who knows? There'll be a huge demand to talk to him. The two teams will have played already in Vegas, 8 or so days earlier. So, maybe that's where a lot of the media conversation can take place on the Leafs road trip. But I think you're being kind, when you say it a little bit unfriendly. I mean, like I think some fans will be behind Mitch because they've appreciated him as a player, but there'll be a number of fans who won't be happy because anytime a player leaves of his own choosing, right, that's when fans feel a little bit upset, let's just say, that, a guy kind of snubbed them and moved on to another team. So I think that's why we're going to have, that kind of feeling in the building.
I hope it's more like what happened when the Boston Bruins had Raymond Bourque come back. Yeah. Raymond chose to leave Boston to go to Colorado to chase the cup. Didn't get it the first year, got it the second year. Yeah. But the fans in Boston always treated Raymond like he was one of their own. I don't think that's going to happen in Toronto.
No.
Because there hasn't been – the Bruins, when Raymond was there, they had unbelievable runs, to the Eastern Conference Final, to the Stanley Cup Final. They played a lot of unbelievably intense games with Montreal and Hartford back in the day, Philadelphia. There were a lot of big rivalry things that Raymond was a part of. You can't say the same thing about Mitchell and what happened in Toronto. And so while I think some of his teammates, especially Austin Matthews, will feel for him, I think the truth of the matter is this is not going to be a celebration of Mitchell Marner's years with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Even though the team will probably put out a great videotape, I don't see it being a great celebration of all his time there. And I'm a huge Mitch Marner fan. I think he was a fantastic player. But I just think realistically, you have to look at it and say it's not going to be very friendly.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, Pierre, too, is like, when you judge these things, right, his career with Toronto, very successful. They made the playoffs a lot, but they didn't really have playoff success. They didn't get to the ultimate goal of winning a Stanley Cup. When players do that in a market, the fans are more forgiving if a guy decides to leave. They're like, hey, he was great for us. He helped us win a cup. we applaud you. We wish you stayed, but it's not as bad. When the player doesn't have that ultimate success, then chooses to leave, that's when, the fans get bitter, they get nasty. I mean, I don't know if it'll be as bad as what happened with the old Nassau Coliseum with the Islander fans, because I grew up with all those fans, and I was one of them back when I was a teenager. And you said it. There's a passion. I don't know. It might border on something else. But that was not a happy moment, I'm sure. Yeah. And still to this day, John Tavares comes back, and fans are not always thrilled with him. But I do think it won't be quite as bad as that, but it won't be a happy moment.
No, the one thing I'd like Leaf fans to think about, EJ, I think it's really, to be fair, he did a lot of really good things as a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Yep.
I mean, look at last year, over 100 points. Good portions of the year, he was carrying that team because there was no Austin Matthews. And clearly, Austin Matthews was not at 100%. Yeah. But if you look at his overall game, his ability to kill penalties, his ability to play multiple positions on the power play, his ability to play right or left wing and sometimes center, and the way he dominated the puck and had the ability to make the players around him better, there's a lot to celebrate about this player and what he did when he was a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I completely understand the fans' point of view on this. And I think a lot of it's not so much about Mitchell Marner. It's about the fact Mitchell Marner was part of a team that really underachieved when it came to playoff hockey.
Yeah, no question about it. Last thing on Marner, it is interesting. I agree with you. I mean, he's a wonderful player. I'll be curious to see how that chemistry, if they get the quick chemistry with Mitch and Jack, with Jack Eichel in the middle, because, Matthews, left shot, right shot for Marner, a little bit of that forehand to forehand play. Matthews was a guy who has the big one-timer. He could score from distance. Eichel's more of a 200-foot center, a great offensive player, but different than Matthews. So I'll be curious to see, because we can never really predict chemistry in hockey, right?
No, never. I love that point, by the way, EJ. And so I'll just take it one step further. Where Jack's really good, he's good off the rush, because that's what dominant number one centers have the ability to do. But where Jack's really good, confined areas, down low from the hash mark to the icing line, he's amazingly creative, and he's very quick in confined areas. Yeah. If Mitchell can learn to find dead spots in in-zone coverage, he's got a chance to light up a lot of points. Yeah. He really does. But that's I'm going to be watching for that early. It's not so much what they do off the rush. It's what they're going to do when they're in contained offensive zone cycle situations, and how dominant Eichel can be and how smart Marner can be.
Yeah, it might mean more goals for Mitch as opposed to assists. We'll see how that plays out. Let's get to the Leafs and their schedule now. And they start out, it's really heavy at home. I mean, I'm looking at it here, 6 of the first 7 at home, 9 home games in October out of the 12, and then 13 of their first 17 games are at home. Pierre, I mean, that tells me they need to get off to a good start.
Well said, and completely agree. And here's the one thing. It's not just the start of the regular season. If you're going to have a really good start, you got to have a really good camp. You can't be overwhelmed by large numbers of people in camp. I got to believe Brad Treliving and Craig Berube are talking about how they're going to address training camp. If they haven't already, they probably are now. But the biggest thing is you got to make sure when your guys break camp and you have that first game, you're ready to hit the ice skating fast, wisely, and with skill. They want to change the DNA of their team. Don't be the laissez-faire team, EJ, that comes out of camp. Okay, we're the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're showing up. We're just going to win. You can't do that when you have that kind of home ice presence early on in the season. If those games go awry for Toronto, they're going to be in trouble.
Pierre, from your standpoint, I mean, as going back to your time coaching and also as obviously as a broadcaster, I mean, you saw this league up close for many, many, many years, and you were one of those guys, like on opening night, let's say, like, when you were at NBC, they would have those games. I mean, when you think about all those home games early in the year, I mean, is it good? Would you rather have it a little bit more evenly distributed? Would you rather have a road trip early in the year? How do you feel about it personally? Because it is heavy. I mean, 13 of 17 to start the season at home is a heavy start of home games.
I learned my hockey at the professional level from the great William Scott Bowman. So I go to the Bowman School of Higher Education when it comes to college or pro hockey. And he always wanted his teams to have trips early in the year. Really important for that to happen, so that if you had new players coming in, you could create a bond. Guys could get to know one another pretty well. And then hopefully it would translate to winning on the road. But at the end of it, you would all feel better about yourselves as a group. Now that you don't have that, you got to find a way as a coach to amalgamate all these new players. So, for instance, Michelli, he's got to come into the team. They're going to have to make him feel comfortable. Nick Roy, how are they going to incorporate him, make him feel comfortable? Henry Thrun, how are they going to bring him in and make him feel comfortable? For the Toronto Maple Leafs, that's a really important part of this. That's why I'm really excited that they have veteran presence on the bench. Mike Van Ryan's a veteran guy, obviously. Craig Berube's a veteran guy. They got people around their group that understand this concept, and I think, EJ, that will help. That will help, but it's really important. Austin Matthews is a captain of this team. He's going to have to be a very omnipresent captain to make sure nothing's left to the side of the road. Everybody brought in to the middle of the road.
So they have 14 back-to-backs on the schedule, so it's not bad. I mean, you're in the Eastern Conference. I mean, you don't suffer a lot of times. Some of those are home back-to-backs.
Yeah.
There's one early in the season, and then sometimes they're just short trips, so it's not too bad. So 14 is about kind of the right number. They have their first road trip of significance into late November, November 22nd, 6-game trip, Montreal, Columbus, Washington, Pittsburgh, and then Florida and Carolina. So that finishes with two really tough teams. What do you make of that 6-game trip in November? I mean, if they get through that first part of the home schedule, good. I mean, now you get into those road challenges against some good teams in the East.
Really good teams in the East. I like the fact you brought those teams up and that road trip. I think for Toronto in particular, there's no time zone travel. That's number one. Number two, the travel is actually really easy. And number three, you end up on the road in warm weather places. So it's kind of a reward. If you do well, the coach will recognize the fact that you did well, and he'll maybe give you a bit of a reprieve. So for players, believe me, that's messaged into a lot of what they go through over the course of, maybe that's the trip where they have the rookie dinner. Maybe that's the trip where you give the guys off, no morning skate, whatever. But there's always a reward if you do well, and I think that's one of the positives about that trip, where it ends.
You know, it's funny, Pierre, too. Looking at their schedule, they have a lot of these where they'll have 5 at home and then they'll have 6 on the road. There's not a lot of, bouncing back and forth. Mm-hmm. I mean, they come after that 6-game trip, they come home, they play 5 games, Montreal, Tampa, San Jose, Edmonton, Chicago, then 3 more on the road. You get into the Christmas break. They've got that 4-game trip in like mid-January where they get the trip to Vegas, Colorado, Utah, Vegas, Winnipeg. Then you get some of that Western travel. What is that like? What is your experience like with that kind of, for the Eastern teams, they don't do it a lot, but when they do it, maybe it's just a good bonding experience to play, and especially to play some good teams out West.
It's a really good bonding experience. One of the biggest problems, though, when you go to Colorado is you're dealing with altitude. It's the same thing now when you go into Salt Lake City, you're dealing with altitude. People don't realize Vegas is at altitude. It's a little bit higher than what people acknowledge. They think you're just in the desert. You're in the elevated desert. You're not in the lower part. So the altitude is a big part of it when you go out to those parts of the United States on trips. To me, the biggest thing, the Olympics are a huge thing. We don't have an all-star thing this year. We do have 2 outdoor games, Stadium Series, and obviously the Winter Classic, both in the South, which will be pretty exciting. But, if you look at Toronto, how many of their guys realistically are going to be part of the Olympics? You got to think a sizable number are going to be part of it. So that Olympic break, too, is going to be an interesting thing to watch when you talk about scheduling. So I think that one trip you just alluded to, not so much the first trip, but the second one, just before they go to the Olympics, that's a pretty substantial trip.
Yeah, that's out West. I mean, they got Seattle, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. That takes them to the break. Then we have the 2-week break, and then they start, interestingly enough, in Tampa and in Florida, and those are always important division games. So you're right. That's a window where the Leafs will not be – they don't play a home game, I guess, and nobody's playing a home game during the Olympics, right, because they're on break. But that's a 6-week window where they really don't play a home game almost between the trip out to Western Canada and the western part of North America and northwestern part, and then coming back and going to Tampa and to Florida.
Yeah, no, you're right. I wouldn't put too much into that because I think the biggest thing, guys are going to want to play. They're going to be really happy to come back and play because they have that break. Now, the guys, the Olympians, they might be a little bit more fatigued and maybe a little bit banged up, but I think most of the other guys will want to play, so that'll be positive. To me, the emotion of the Marner moment's going to be really interesting to watch on January the 23rd, obviously. And then I think the biggest thing for Toronto, I love what you said about coming back. Those rivalry games with Tampa and in Florida on the road, those are going to matter because that's just before you get into the trade deadline. So Brad Treliving's going to know exactly what he has, after that set of games down in Florida. And then you wonder what's the roster going to look like after the trade deadline, because either you're going to be in a real good position, EJ, or you're going to be in a bad position.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because, look, I believe the trade deadline is March the 6th. They play on the 4th and 5th back-to-back games, New Jersey and in New York against the Rangers, right? And I look at the team, Pierre, I just think that there's work to be done here, too, if they're going to go and make a long run and maybe win a Stanley Cup, is that, this is going to be an important stretch of the season, because I do think Brad Treliving will be looking to add. If he hadn't done so already, he'll be looking to add. And I think your point is really well taken, is that, those games leading up are going to, depending on where they are, because we're assuming it's going to be a good season again for the Leafs, and they're going to be right there. We've both been around long enough to know it doesn't always work out that way, but that's going to be an interesting stretch for that management group to really assess where they're at.
I agree. The other part that I think is interesting with Toronto, under the radar acquisitions, nobody's talking about Travis Boyd. Travis Boyd's a really smart, good player out of the University of Minnesota. Not a lot of people are talking about Grew. He's a really smart, good player. They've added subtle depth. Henry Thrawn, I've been watching Henry since he played at St. Mark's in Southborough, Massachusetts, before he went to the National Team Development Program. He's way under the radar as an initial puck mover. He's a really good-sized player that can move the puck and really skate. Henry's got to get better defensively. So subtly, they've added pieces to their team that people aren't really talking about. Everybody's kind of scrutinizing Roy because obviously he's part of the Marner situation. Yeah. And Michelli. Michelli's way under the radar, way better player than what people think. So I think subtly Brad Treliving's done a real good job. And I think this team's got a chance to be a lot better than what some of the pundits are saying, EJ. I really believe that.
Yeah, it's funny because, I talked briefly to Anthony Solars the other day, and his feeling is, he goes, hey, obviously you're going to miss a player like Marner, but he goes, we really, we came together last year, thought the team had a really good year. He feels really good about the team going into the season this year. And I agree with you. They've added some interesting pieces. Nick Waugh has always been one of my favorite players in this league because he's such a versatile performer, and he can help the back six. He can help kill penalties. He can be a second unit power play guy if you need him. He win faceoffs. So, it'll be interesting. And that's why, again, I circle back to that trade deadline, because I do think they need a little bit more. Maybe they'll do that beforehand, but if we get close to the deadline, that'll be that window where they're watching. And then we get past that, we go down the stretch, it'll be, a busy March, 15 games in March by the end of it. A lot of teams have, I think Pittsburgh has 17 games in March. And then the final week of the season, they end up the year against the Ottawa Senators on April the 15th. And, hey, they played in the first round last year, and I expect the Senators to take a little bit of another step this year. That could be another first-round matchup.
What's going to be interesting? You talk about Ottawa and Toronto finishing the year off and potentially playing in the playoffs, which I think could happen as well. What's going to happen with Erik Karlsson? You alluded to Pittsburgh playing those 17 games. Is Erik Karlsson going to be traded out of Pittsburgh? Who's going to be the team that's going to want to take that contract on dollar-wise? Yeah. And then does he end up in the East, or does he end up back in the West? When he was playing in San Jose, he had all kinds of success offensively in particular. But the rumors are, and I think there's a lot of heavy discussion, potentially Detroit, who obviously needs some help. What about Toronto? They need somebody to orchestrate and run their power play. Mitchell Marner's not there anymore. And if you look at their back end, it's not going to be Jake McCabe. It's not going to be Christopher Tanev. Yeah. It's not going to be Morgan Riley. It's not going to be Brandon Carlo. It's not going to be Simon Benoit. And I don't think Oliver Ekman-Larsson, that's not in his bag. That's not in his bag of tricks. So who's going to be the guy that's going to run their power play? I think that's going to be one of the big pressing stories going into the season for Toronto.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point by you. The only thing I would say about Karlsson, and it's such a strange thing because, when you think of Erik Karlsson, right, he's won the Norris Trophy a couple times. He puts up all kinds of offensive points. We know he's a terrific offensive player. But when you look at the power plays that he has been a part of in his career, they haven't been dynamic. It's hard to fathom, but I went through and looked at every year And even in Pittsburgh last year, when the team improved on the power play, it wasn't because of Erik Karlsson. I think they used Matt Grzelcyk back there for a lion's share of being on that first unit. So it's kind of crazy. But to your point, a right shot guy that can help move the puck up the ice and can be a part of a unit that is going to need, a little bit of a change with Marner being such a big part of it out of the mix. Maybe he's someone they look at. But certainly, to me, they need another piece or two, Pierre.
No, they do. They're not, and I don't think Brad Treliving's finished. But when you acquire the assets that he's acquired, and you talked about Anthony Stolarz before, it's such a good point. I thought last year they really stole Anthony Stolarz. You get that player on a 2-year deal on an AAV of $2.5 million. That's an amazing acquisition. And this is not against Joseph Woll. I believe if Anthony Stolarz doesn't get hurt in that collision with Sam Bennett, the Florida Panthers don't repeat as Stanley Cup champs. I truly believe that, because if you think about it, Toronto's up 2-0 in the series. They're up 3-1 in Game 3, halfway through the second period. They end up losing that game. They lose Game 4. They get crushed in Game 5. They win Game 6. Toronto does in Florida in a really good game played by Toronto. Then they get wiped out in Game 7. But I believe if Stolarz is healthy, they're going to win that series. That was heist. That was a major heist by Brad Treliving and his people. I think Michelli, a different position, obviously, got a chance to be one of those major heists for Toronto that people aren't acknowledging enough about.
Yeah, for sure. He's a guy that he's got good ability to work on the power play. Left shot guy. We'll see how he fits with the Leafs. But Pierre, I appreciate the time, my friend. You're running around. You're moving. So get back to business there. I'm sure we'll get another chance to talk this summer. But that's a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs schedule. For Pierre McGuire, I'm EJ Hradek. You've been watching the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.